And Jesus traveled around Galilee. He could not go to Judea because the Jewish religious leaders were trying to kill him. And soon it was the Feast of Tabernacles. And Jesus, on the last day, on the climax of the festival, stood up and shouted, "Anyone who is thirsty, come to me. Whoever believes in me can come to me and drink. For the scriptures say, out of him will flow rivers of living water from his heart." Now, Jesus was talking about the Spirit when he said living water, and that anyone could have that believed in him. The Spirit had not yet been given because Jesus had not yet been glorified. And so Jesus left and went to the Mount of Olives. And on the next day, he came back to the temple. And a huge crowd had gathered. So he sat down and he began to teach them. And the Jewish leaders and the Pharisees brought in a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. And they put her in front of the crowd. And they said to Jesus, "Jesus, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. But what do you say?" And Jesus just bent down in the dust and wrote with his finger. He knew that they were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. But they kept demanding an answer. And so finally Jesus stood up and said, "All right, he who is without sin can cast the first stone." And he went back down and wrote in the dust. And upon hearing this, the accusers just went out one by one, beginning with the oldest. And Jesus stood up and he said to the woman, "Where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you?" And she said, "No, Lord." And he said, "Neither do I. Now go and sin no more." And then he turned to the crowd and began to say, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not have to walk in darkness, but will have the light that leads to life." Now, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man that had been born blind. And his disciples asked him, "Why is he blind? Was it he that sinned, or was it his parents that sinned?" And Jesus said, "It was neither he that sinned or his parents that sinned. This happened so that God's power might be seen in him." And then Jesus took mud and he spit on the ground in the dirt and made mud with his saliva. And he spread it over the blind man's eyes. And he said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." And Siloam means sent. And so the man went and washed in the pool of Siloam, and he came back seeing. And when his neighbors and people that knew him saw him, they said, "Oh, is that the man that used to sit and beg? Is this the blind man?" Some said he was, and others says, "No, it just looks like him." But the man kept saying, "No, I am the same one. I am the same one." And so they ended up taking him to the Pharisees because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed the man. The Pharisees didn't believe that he had been born blind or that he was healed. And so they said to the blind man, they said, "God should get the glory for this. We know that this man, Jesus, is a sinner." And the man said, "I don't know if he's a sinner, but one thing I know is I was blind and now I see." And they said, "But what did he do? How did he do it?" And he said, "Do I have to tell you again? I've already told you. Weren't you listening? Wait, do you want to be his disciple too?" And they cursed him and said, "You are his disciple. We are disciples of Moses. And God spoke to Moses. We don't even know where this man came from." And the man said, "Oh, well, that's very strange. You don't know where he came from, and yet he healed my eyes. Ever since the beginning of the world, no one has ever been able to open the eyes of a man born blind. If God wasn't with him, then he couldn't do it." And with that, they said, "You were born a total sinner. Are you trying to teach us?" And they threw him out of the synagogue. When Jesus heard of this, he found the man, and he came to him and said, "Do you want to believe in the Son of Man?" And he said, "I do, but I don't know who is he?" And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one that is talking to you is he." And the man said, "I believe." And he bowed down and worshiped Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, I sacrifice my life for the sheep." I have other sheep who are not in the sheepfold, and I must find them too. And they will listen to my voice, and there will be one shepherd and one flock. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. When I walk through the darkest valley, he is with me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. He anoints my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely, goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.